AyAyAyAi. Hi, my name is Heather Seikel, and I'm happy to be here. I'm an avid listener and first-time guest to this podcast. Thank you for having me.
Oh man, that was like a sweet ay.
Hey, that was awesome. Thank you, Heather. That was a great intro.
Thank you
I
for
like
having
this kind
me.
of intro, Lucky.
Oh yeah, I know, and the energy on that's great. Good way to get started. Um, Today we're going to be jumping into AI, but from a different perspective, from the informatics side of the house. And today we have Heather and Asif, and we're going to be discussing. Asif, can you jump in and help me out here?
You know, Heather wrote a paper, and the paper focuses on something that has a lot of AI implications in it. And the reason she's here is because I cannot have conversations about these topics because even if I do, I'll sound miserable. Like I'm not trying to use I'm not able to use the right terminologies, the way that people will need to understand it, and take actions on it, right? So I will do a poor justice to it if I was talking about this topic just by reading that paper. So what Heather wrote about, Heather is a subject matter expert on it. So she needs to talk about uh, this new AI implementations and the new use cases of AI with her understanding, with her expertise. So that way maybe me and Lucky can catch up to Heather and say like, all right, Heather, how can we help, right?
Heather, again, we thank you for being here today and exploring informatics and AI. Can you just give us a little bit of background of your experiences?
Yes, so I'm a registered nurse for the past 17 years. I worked 16 years direct patient care, the last year focusing on informatics, receiving my master's degree in nursing informatics with my undergraduate as a registered nurse, nursing science. And so nursing informatics is a combination of the science of nursing, cognitive science, computer science, and information science. So my graduate project focused on using artificial intelligence as a way to help with antimicrobial stewardship or the use of antibiotics in regards to preventing inpatient or outpatient healthcare concerns that would require the need for an antibiotic. So basically, artificial intelligence, if used correctly, safely, can assist providers and nurses in taking care of patients and providing them with the best patient outcome.
Wow, that's amazing. You know, I've created some data warehouses where we look at disease states, but looking at antimicrobial data and then using AI to help patients is fantastic. I didn't even know that's even possible. So, when did this start, or how did this start about?
Well, my master's degree worked with the local VA, and they were focusing on using inpatient room cameras to monitor a patient's movement to help prevent from pressure injuries from occurring. And so that is one piece of artificial intelligence that can be used for patient health care and prevention in regards to the need for antibiotics that would be needed for infections caused by pressure injuries.
So this is what I meant by something that I cannot explain or talk about.
Right.
This is, um, these are multiple things coming together in order to prevent further injuries and event, better patient services, right? I bet it has a lot to do with satisfaction, but it just probably improves a person's outcome far better. And using this artificial intelligence capability, I think, I mean, we've spoken about healthcare before. I think the issue was always that privacy, right? But some use cases in medical system, you're just like, is privacy really that big of a obstacle in providing these type of outcome that is, I don't know if I can weigh it, but if I can weigh it, to me, it just sounds right away. It's like some things the privacy shouldn't be a main obstacle, right? We have to be sensitive towards privacy, but not let that be the obstacle into that good outcome that we can have. Um, any thought on that, Heather?
I agree. I mean, patient privacy and security is first and foremost, but with the use of artificial intelligence and nursing informatics, a nurse informatics can be a digital native, someone who's familiar with using technology and help people who are digital immigrants or digital refugees, people who aren't used to using technology in a healthcare setting or in general, or are forced to use it because it's been put upon them based on societal norms or recent societal health issues. Nursing informatics can help bridge that gap, help explain how artificial intelligence isn't something to be scared of. It just needs to be explored and understood and accepted, because it's going to be implemented more and more across every industry, including healthcare.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. There's areas where, and I use your terminologies. It's fantastic. Is the digital refugees, the user population? You, the, it comes down to, there's a scary part of AI that says, hey, we're here now. We're starting to give you data, and in some cases, people are afraid of AI and somehow it's going to take their jobs or they're going to get replaced. But at the end, when it comes with AI opens opportunity, and I think it's going to be opening up jobs. But that user population, there's a little bit of, AI is a buzzword right now, so there's no real way to gauge how people are going to welcome AI. And so I think training the user population and customizing it, making it to where it's something that's helping them, like it's more of a an appendage or something that helps them do their jobs as opposed to taking their jobs. And that's going to take some time to really teach people, the population, and change the way they see AI. But I think the digital refugees at some point will have to get on board and really see the benefits of AI. But it's going to be a long time coming before they just jump on, because it's hard to change that culture. The culture of, this is the way we do things now. I don't want to change, and they're going to be scared. But there's always opportunity in AI as long as we can prove to them that there's the data and the output and the outcomes are something beneficial.
Yeah, I think the AI Trism is a top 10 list of new technology or technology that's up and coming in Gartner's list, trust, risk, and security. This Trism, AI Trism, look, I don't know how long it will take. I don't know who's going to develop it or who's going to develop it very well that everybody trusts it, and we're able to trust it with our security and manage the risk, to the minimal level. Um, let's just talk about it from a perspective of, like, Heather, look, if the privacy wasn't an issue, if people in digital native, which is the people that are born into digital technology versus digital immigrant like myself, who had to adopt to the technology at some point in life, versus digital refugee who's been disrupted by technology's availability, right? So as a digital immigrant, I see the privacy in a different light than a digital native does. Excuse me, digital native will. And digital refugee, I cannot even fathom how they feel about privacy. But as far as the digital native goes, I know me and Lucky would talk to somebody who's half our age and say, like, how do you feel about privacy? Um, uh, but but on this question that I'm about to ask, which is that, like, if privacy wasn't an issue in your field, like, how would you like to have this AI use case be implemented, and what are some of the steps that you would encourage medical professionals or anybody who's designing or developing these AI technology?
That's a great question. Thank you. So, first and foremost, it's there to help the practitioner, provider, and the patient. That's the goal, is for it to provide everyone with better outcomes, better health, happier life. And so, if it can be accessible and available and explained properly, proper teaching, I think, is the first step. Just getting people to ask the questions, speaking about their concerns, and then addressing those concerns and letting them know that this is for the good of society. Healthcare providers can be tired at the end of the day and can miss things. And so, with the implementation of artificial intelligence, it's just an extra layer of safety and security, another level of help that could catch what maybe the tired healthcare provider who's seen 20 patients in one day is missing because they're cognitively tired.
Yeah, I just want to hit on that cognitive tired part because I saw a cartoon the other day that says the smarter this AI gets, less it wants to do the work. So, what would an AI do if it wants to get out of work, right? But the thing is, like, I get tired just by sitting in front of my laptop. I doze off because I just had lunch. I can only imagine what somebody who's taking care of patients and various levels of patients, as in, you're not just seeing a sick patient who's going to be bedridden, but you're also seeing a child, or you're seeing an adult. You're seeing all sorts of ages and different types of patient care. And I'm not even going to try to imagine that. That must be a world of like, just fatigue is probably like least of the things that you guys are experiencing, right? Because you probably are emotionally drained, which I'm probably not, because I'm just dealing with a laptop all day long. It doesn't take that much of a emotional drain out of me. I thought of like this idea of using computer vision cameras in order to provide that or augment that computer vision camera to help the nurses on staff or the doctors that needs to come and see the patient, to provide them with some augmentation, right? How do you take a patient information and merge that with the computer vision to say, like, this patient that is bedridden right now, that is PI susceptible, this is the record that they have, EHR, EMRs, right? Tell us a little bit more about that, because I'm trying to put all the word soup together, but I think you can do a better job at that. Like, how do we take that hardware and how do we take that software and how do we take the practicality of human bodies and put those together? And what are the steps there?
Yeah, that's another great question. So, with electronic health records or EMRs, electronic medical records, there's a lot of data that's collected and it's a lot to sift through, and it needs to be entered in accurately, and it can be very easily entered in not correctly by the users using it. So, with artificial intelligence, it would be able to, in that sense, sift through what is actually entered in, but what the provider probably means. And so, connecting that word diagnosis with coding diagnosis, like ICD 10, is a way that diagnoses are coded commonly, in SNOMED as well. And so, if those can be lined up or correctly linked, then the patient can be correctly taken care of based on their diagnoses. And all of this is housed in electronic health record or electronic medical record, which, thanks to the HITECH Act of 2009, which is the Health Information Technology for Economic and Clinical Health Act, that has allowed hospital systems and doctors' offices to implement EHRs and EMRs, which can talk to each other. So basically, that information can be housed and transmitted and shared between different health systems and the patient's record follows them electronically versus a paper file that is what is also commonly used for those digital immigrants and digital refugees who aren't accepting of, EMR and EHR medical record systems.
Yeah, I think the computer vision piece of it was brought up because like there's how do you teach, excuse me, how do you teach a system to recognize the bed sore? How do you recognize a bruise, right? A lot of computer visions behind it, and more we escalate, excuse me, let me use the right word here, more we are able to scale these AI services, it will integrate text to speech, speech to text, as in, you're taking that EHR and you're able to tell a medical doctor that, hey, from the record, this is what has been seen like last 2 years or 3 years or however long the patient has come into the system. Text to speech is able to speak to the doctor about the conditions, and then speech to text where doctor notes or the patient's information, as patients put in other information, or the nurse as they're speaking, these are speech to text notes transcribed, and then transcribed notes are able to turn into content from context, right? Mm-hmm. So these contexts are able to go into the EHR, and then merging the EHR's text and transcription text, you're able to come to a beautiful conclusion of like there's a checks and balance on all of these, right? Checks and balances that the doctor is not missing a note. And then if the doctor is able to challenge the EMR's decision making, which is to say, like, how did you come to this decision, right? There's explainable AI that will be able to say, like, look, this is how I've diagnosed this person with this because this is what I've seen on their EHR from 5 years ago, right? Because they're more susceptible to have these type of issues because 5 years ago they've been diagnosed with these type of issues. So now, if you're a doctor and you have, ability to read notes, you're not really looking into like last 5 years of records granularly, where AI will be able to go through it in granular step by step to say, like, look, 5 years ago, this person has been diagnosed with this condition, but never been treated because nobody thought it was that serious. But what if 5 years down the road, as a side impact to that, these are the kind of conditions that it has? So now the doctor and the AI could come to different decisions where AI knows how to explain itself, and AI's decisions can be evaluated by the doctor, how the AI came to that conclusion. And both can take notes and both can make decisions that could be different. But to augment a human to decide, make a decision, I think is where AI shines the best, because that's the perfect use case of artificial intelligence. And we're heading that way, I think, slowly but surely. Just don't know the timeline, but again, it's happening where the humans are actually in the room taking notes as a doctor and patient is conversating. They're literally not physically in the room, but they're being given the access to listen in to what a doctor and patient is conversating about and taking notes on it, right? So that way, these human note takers are actually able to merge their note with the doctor's note. It's being done manually at this point, but you can only imagine the level of healthcare that we need. We're nowhere near it, even in 2020, even with all the high technology we have. And we don't have that many people that we can trust to be in between the doctor and the nurses, or doctor and the patients, right? Because patients' privacy matters. So I'm just going to leave it at that, because like that's what I found out to be very exciting, that once you install the computer vision in a situation like where you're talking about PI, that computer, that camera and the camera system could do wonders just off of one device as a hardware. Rest of it is all software and data entry, right? Data acquisition points. Just by algorithms and camera and software, we're able to do miracles that it's probably not possible just 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting that the issues that I saw whenever I was working with medical data or patient records is like you mentioned. There's data that's not regulated in some cases. It's just you have values that are just null values, or the data is just, for some reason, it's just the wrong type of data, and you have to go through and clean the data, and so you, I'm just curious because I know that I had these problems with data science or creating data warehouses, but with the AI, you're telling me that the AI is able to understand where you have maybe fields or tables that are not necessarily the right values, and the AI is able to see past that in some cases. Because I thought I'm from the old school where it's like the data has to be right before we can do something with it, and it's like almost garbage in, garbage out. But it's interesting you say that in some cases AI would work with that, or can you explain that a little bit better how that worked or your experience with that?
Sure. So I believe with the healthcare system, leaps and bounds are being made in regards to how the information and the data that is being entered into these electronic health records is being utilized and also evaluated. So it has manual entries from providers like nurses or primary care providers, surgeons, etc., that are written out as notes, like a free text type. You have dot phrases, which a provider can just select a phrase that best fits the condition or the note that is being documented. And then you also have the codes associated with diagnoses. So the technology now is able to sift through all those types of data entry points and collect it and evaluate it and see what is being diagnosed, what is being treated, and how to best care for that patient. It's a slow process, and yes, a lot of it does take nursing informatics and other healthcare providers to make sure that what the data is presenting is correct, but it is possible.
So, what did you see early on with like error rates and training the model? How did it grow, or were you able to? Was it is it pretty substantial? Did it automatically the natural language processing? Did it pretty much start seeing that became medical terms and it started associating it pretty quickly? I'm interested in how that works. So yeah, I have hundreds of questions now, but that's one of the first ones. I mean, how did that work initially training the model?
So it's a slow process because you want to make sure that it's accurate. You want to make sure that what, like you said, garbage in, garbage out. But as there are more, nursing informaticists and more interest in AI and digital natives being entered into this type of field, it collectively has gotten better and progressed and provided better results.
Wow, that's going to definitely improve the way we serve the veterans or just in the healthcare field. That's fantastic work. Have you found where these data points kind of marry up with maybe other areas and medical research and kind of start to lead to maybe other areas to support um, research?
Yeah, there's definitely interest from the research. There's interest in making sure that moving forward, that healthcare is better, more accurate, reliable, and resilient. So therefore, it's just a consistent effort from different collaborations and different fields, like you said, research, data scientists, nursing. It's not just one field of professionals, it's everybody working together on a common goal to make sure that patients have a better healthcare outcome, that the data that has been entered into their EMR or EHR can be utilized correctly in the future.
Wow,
I,
fantastic. Yeah.
yeah. This, I think one thing I want to go back to is the garbage out and garbage in, right? Um, so in the garbage out, if you have garbage in, um, the decision making that happens in garbage out is it could be misleading because the information that was put in. So I think I talk about it in every podcast about human in the loop, right? So how do we augment the doctors rather than replacing the doctors is what we have to think about mindset wise, right? The mindset is that how do we incorporate this AI into the life of a nurse? How does a nurse experience it, right? How does a doctor experience it? If we are able to increase the user experience without really having the users question like why this technology fails me every time, would be a great use case for machine learning. And I think one of the things that I've always looked into, like said, how do we look at these big cases, big use cases, and also start using the small use cases, right? In healthcare, I love that idea of scheduling, right? You schedule a patient, and that patient most likely doesn't miss a day, right? Because what happens is that I'll give you myself as an example. I'm a veteran myself. I've been to the VA hospitals, and forgive me, VA, for I've done sin where I've missed my appointments. um, and I've done it in like a last minute because I totally forgot about it, right? And the reason is that like I go to VA so often to stumble on few of them. I think I find it natural, but at the same time, it costs VA a whole lot of time and effort to make up for that missed appointment. And when VA misses an appointment, okay, that's a government tax write-off, right? But when on the commercial side, somebody misses an appointment, that doctor does not get paid for that hour of a patient that he or she did not see, right? So for me to not be in our commercial side and missing my appointments, it's a bigger deal. But all in all, any missed appointment is a big deal. And having that AI machine learning incorporated into scheduling, which brace yourself, right? It's like taking my privacy, right? Understanding who I am as a person and building a medical note about it, right? So let's say, for example, how do you incorporate my medical history and my job, right? What kind of work do I do? So if I'm a trucker and I'm out of state most of the time, should you be, scheduling me in certain time of the year, right? As in certain time of the month, certain time of the week. Because I'm a trucker, I'm in and out of the state. I'm an IT guy, I stay at home. Should you do the teledoc with me, right? So all these preferences and personal information matching with the healthcare that I need, what sort of amazing technology are we looking at, right? It's an AI machine learning base that is not tailored to a population, but rather individually. So, somebody who lives in my zip code, I don't have to look at it from a zip code base like everybody in the zip code is IT. No, everybody in the zip code has multiple different types of jobs, right? Somebody's a trucker, somebody's always out of state, somebody's always out of the zip code. So for them to come in, they have to be adjusted to certain scheduling. So what happens with me, and the reason I sinned so often about missing my appointment is that they will ask me like, "Hey, what time do you want to come in, or what day do you want to come in?" And they will tell me a date that is like 2 months out, right? Because it's VA, there's a lag, right? And I'll say, "Yeah, I'm available usually on Wednesday, so schedule me at 3 o'clock." Just a scenario, but that doesn't necessarily mean all the Wednesdays are the same for me, right? So I think there's a whole lot of things that we can do in a big use case and a small use case, which is that everywhere there's data, we can engage with AI machine learning in some ways. But some of the small use cases of like, reducing that missed appointment to me is like the most attractive version of it because it's minimal amount of risk to engage in those kind of research, to understand the patient, so that way you can provide the patient with a better appointment timing, and quality, like access to that ability to say like I'm going to send you a text and you're going to be able to dynamically figure out like what time of the day you want to come in. And just by asking a few questions and giving me the few answers, we're able to schedule you for the rest of the year, however, fits for your schedule. And time after time, we check in with you and say, like which VA is doing already. VA sends me a text. Hey, are you coming or not? But still I missed the appointment because like that day just wasn't ready for me, bring too much excitement to the day. So I think that appointment scheduling and all the way to that big use case of like how do I diagnose you with some disease that might take prolonged amount of treatment. So like whatever the sensitivity case is, if we can start from the bottom and work our way up, or start from the top and then work our way down, there's just a whole lot of good use cases out there, but we need lots of informed informatics like Heather to be able to engage on these, because
Yeah.
there's so many little ins and outs that we don't know about, like so Heather, um, I just want to say thank you because, like, we are only in your presence when we are the most vulnerable. So, like, I always want to mention it to a nurse because, like, I don't see a nurse unless I'm feeling vulnerable, right? And you guys take care of us, and you are that human in the loop that we must take care of and augment you with as much technology as possible without invading your privacy, without making your life more chaotic, something that gives you a user experience more than a machine learning. Because when we talk about machine learning, we approach it in different ways. But when we start calling it a user experience, it changes the whole concept. It changes the whole perspective. So, like, we are providing a user experience. We have to think about how does a user perceive this, right? Um, not going to go into the digital refugee content, but I think Heather might be able to hit on some of those stories about how user experience can go wrong and turn user completely off into technology and never go back, right? But that user experience, I think, is the one that I concern myself with. So instead of calling it all machine learning and AI, this is all about user experience. How do we improve, increase, scale, and sustain that user experience for better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no,
I
I
just
was just
wanted to
gonna
jump
say
in. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go right ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to talk over you, but I was just gonna say that the user experience is key. It's what will allow people to feel comfortable with the technology. If you have a bad first impression, you're not going to be likely to try it again, no matter who's trying to introduce it to you. And so, yes, it needs to be tailored to the individual. The individual needs to be comfortable with it. And that's what, nursing informatics is here for, to help those who aren't comfortable with it, or even those who are, just understand it better and see how best it can be utilized.
Yeah. I just was thinking about my daughter. She started in nursing, or at least the track college, about 4.5 years ago. And if we just look back, what nursing informatics was 4 years ago, and then what it is today, with the developments of machine learning, and the thing is, nurses had statistical data back, previous, I say back early 2000s, data warehousing, analytical data started becoming more of a trend, and then more of healthcare hospitals started looking into what can we benefit from statistical data. But now what I'm noticing is it's like the differences are where before you could put together some kind of either forecasting model for analyzing data, but it wasn't really it was more just of a report, and it was more of something that was static. And what I'm looking at now, the difference is now between the statistics and what machine learning is providing now is it's almost now like the statistics now have become more alive now, and now you can what do you see the differences? Because it's hard for me. I can see some models where I can develop a statistical model that'll do something similar to machine learning, and it'll do some kind of forecasting. But now the models are a little bit more developed. What advantages do you see from what we had in the past and what we have now
A
with
lot
modeling?
of good. Yeah, there's a lot of positive from where we were to where we are now. A lot of it has to do with the acceptance of the use of this technology and being able to get the individuals who are using it to, like we discussed, use it correctly. So, therefore, the more accurate the technology is used, the more it's used, the better results you get.
Yeah, it just seems like you need to have special users or something, because I just the refugees, the old school nurses, the guys that just come up and just they're used to. I'm not sure exactly what they're used to doing, but they take your blood, they look at you, and you say, "All right, you got a cold." The nurses, and then you have the nurses that are coming in new from school, like my daughter, and they're like geared up with information, and they're talking about how to do this or how to do that. I'm sure they're excited, But I know there is in any field. There's the guys that don't want technology, and there's the guys that are just chomping at the bit to figure out how to innovate how they do their jobs. And so there's got to be the ones that are just really not excited about AI either.
Oh, there's definitely those, and those are the nurses I've worked with that retired as soon as they could once electronic health records were implemented. And it's sad because they have all this experience and knowledge that they can pass along to younger nurses. And that's the issue with, the nursing profession, and why I hope nursing informatics can possibly learn how to harness what experienced nurses have to offer, what their knowledge is, how they, perform, because they're the ones that know what to do the best. And so just even getting those experienced nurses to work a little bit longer and use the technology. And it's a learning experience for everyone. The younger nurses can learn how to teach the technology to individuals who aren't comfortable with it. And then the older and more experienced nurses can, give feedback as to what they don't like about the technology, instead of just retiring at the, mention of having to use a computer.
Yeah, I think that succession, right? Succession is a huge issue because the age gap in workforce, we're talking about it's very visible now, right? Because a lot of the people that wants to retire from workforce are forced to stay at workforce because somehow their retirement is not working out to the point that they thought earlier in their career it would work out. And then the younger generation that wants to excel in the same positions are being forced to stay in a junior level positions or just find another junior level position. So they're in a junior level position for a very long time. The succession, the progress that used to happen or should happen, is kind of hindered right now. So what you're pointing out is that like the opposite of it is like there are older nurses that are retiring versus there's new nurses that are coming in informed with data, informed with technology, yet not so much with experience, right? So how do you maintain that balance of the shift in that succession? So knowledge management to me, I think, is the long term vision behind everything we just discussed for a use case. Anything you teach in AI, every year goes by, it's like teaching a child how to be an adult, right? For AI to live like for 10 years means that AI has 10 years worth of experience. It wouldn't behave like a child most likely, but that's an analogy, right? But a 10-year-old AI is far better than a 1-year-old AI. There's no doubt about that, and that's where we are in a lot of the national security purposes or corporate industry purposes. Wherever you look at it, wherever you develop your AI, it matters how old that AI is. And one of my favorite examples is in the banking industry, right? Some of the banks that has been around for hundreds of years are nowhere near as good as BlackRock hedge fund, right? Excuse me, not banking, but the finance industry. Finance industry, you see BlackRock, they outbid everybody. They are like $11 trillion in assets right now because they're known for their AI that helps them with hedge fund for their financial transactions, right? So it matters what sort of AI you're raising and how long you've had that AI is another topic. And before you talk about like Tesla, Amazon, and so on and so forth, I'm worried about who it is today starting an AI that will be the biggest AI or the biggest company that we haven't even seen yet. Right? 10 years from now, there'll be another company that outbids everybody with their AI performing to a level that we cannot even fathom right now. Right? But without going into that competition of who's going to develop that best AI, awesome AI, outperforming AI of a different level like Tesla's, knowledge management is something that we should, as I said, 10 years from now, knowledge management for next 50 years. How do we start that knowledge management today? Right? because I can use business use case. I can use that business justification to say, like, why should you invest in AI today, even though it won't make you money today? But if you want to talk about where you will be in 10 years, we can talk about business justification monetarily. And then we can start talking about 50 years from now, how would you use that knowledge management piece that you started today? That can be from your scheduling. That can be from your radiology department to detect your x-rays, or your, use cases of detecting cancers, or whatever the AI that you want to build today. You can put a knowledge management piece behind it. So no matter who comes and goes within your organization, that knowledge is always being baked into your business process continuously. I cannot emphasize that enough. Like, that is a key to AI development, because that's the kind of far vision you want to have. Is that ability to say, like, no matter who comes and goes in this organization or industry or agency in a government, we are always able to maintain those knowledge for ourselves for better usage down the road, to train people with, to provide this historical information, historical data with relevancy, finding the context, not just saying, "Tell me what happened in day 1980," right? Well, in the future, it'd be like, "Tell me the day in 1922. What was Asif talking about? What's the context behind it?" Because you can hear me talk, but you would not have any understanding what I'm saying, because there's no context in what I'm saying, right? These are kind of things that we have to think about for knowledge management. So when you say all the nurses are leaving and taking all their knowledge with them, my goodness, that is a huge loss for the new nurses that are coming in and not being able to keep up with that knowledge. So knowledge management, yeah, check that out.
We have a great use case that we've seen here recently, with nursing and COVID that we all had to suffer through recently. It was nurses were just at their wits' end, working crazy hours trying to support us through this. We had COVID and the pandemic, and then you had this great resignation. And the use case was, you had all these people that were part of a specific field that were stressed, and then they all retired with their knowledge. And now that same area is now suffering, and then how do we augment that? And it just feels like AI is just coming in just in the nick of time, not at the right moment, but at least we know, look, this happened the last time. We're still bleeding for it. We still have an open wound and it's still bleeding somewhat. We all see what happened. Now let's prepare for it. And AI is just set up. It's primed for this type of situation now. At some point, it is going to be intimidating, though. As a nurse, think about this. We're going to have Alexa now that can now be that voice where, in some cases, you know, the man, the I guess the human in the loop, the person that would be interacting with the patient now. In some cases, they're going to think a direction, and they'll have Alexa in their back pocket or in their ear saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, it should be this way." I mean, it's great, but at the same time, it's almost scary that we're gonna get to that point. Do you see that being here in the near future?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot of clinical decision support systems and tools that are implemented to help providers with medications associated with diagnoses. And so it's already happening almost. The experienced provider or nurse always has the final say, obviously, because they have that background, but it's already here. It's already implemented in the fact that, it is suggesting that maybe what you're thinking to do isn't the best course based on all of this clinical knowledge that I've pulled from a database. I being, a Siri or Alexa or Google or whatever the healthcare specific version is going to be.
That's wild because okay, so do you follow your gut or do you say, "All right, Alexa,
You
medical Alexa, nursing Alexa, nursing Siri, whatever the voice is, you're right and I'm wrong," or "No, you're not right. I know what I'm doing. You're wrong." When does I can totally see that. That's going to be interesting. Where do the error rates start to kind of where do we have to optimize? I think it's funny. I love data, and so to me, it's just another opportunity just to have another joke. Hey, they don't deserve that. They don't need penicillin, and for some reason they get something else. I don't know. Analyzing diseases and analyzing people is always going to be. I'm a human. I'm going to make mistakes. We try to self-analyze, but in the future, I can totally see how this is definitely going to help us all. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're
Yes.
at right place at the right time, right?
Yeah.
We are in a cusp of where we are able to push our feedbacks and our survey information or our ability to intervene in designing of an AI, so that way that AI behaves as in it's augmenting us, right? So before that, Siri runs her mouth. Excuse my language there, but like, point is, Siri should not be talking while I'm talking. Siri should be like saying, hey Siri, do you have any inputs to this? And Siri will say, I have 3 or 4 things I can add to the value of what you're providing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm here for adding value. I'm here to augment you. We can design those AI, right? Those are the AI will only do as much as we instruct it by a coding and programming language, right? It has this boundaries that it can cross if you let it, right? You still have to let it, and that's where the boundary begins all over again, right? Now you can say like, Siri, look, you're augmenting me, you're not interrupting me, right? So I think that's the human in the loop concept that we need to have today, like as in the far vision of having knowledge management for the next 50 years, or trying to be the best healthcare provider for the next 10 years. They all come with the single decisions of like, who will you want to be in that room? If it's a bunch of guys, and I don't want to be derogatory about anybody here, but at the same time, if my intention in life is to make millions by having an AI that outbids all the healthcare providers in the world, I will create an AI that doesn't care about those kind of things, right? Whereas in, if I had the intentions of like, I'm going to provide the best healthcare with the best human capabilities, I will come to a different conclusion. I will augment a person with those AI that is helpful, rather than to say like, yo, put me in a bad situation right there, Siri.
Wow.
You make me look bad in front of the patients.
Yeah, this is amazing. My mind is just I see so much opportunity here because this hits close to home for me. Having you here on the podcast, um, I've done, like I said, I've done a few things with data. I've taken data and I've created disease states and pharmacy data warehouses. And in the disease states, we were looking at like myocardial infarctions. That was one of the things I focused in on, MIs. And so this is where I see the line. But whenever I created a data warehouse or a data cube or report, the data was always isolated to the person that was looking at it. So it was typically some kind of reports person or analyst or pharmacist or someone that was a researcher, or the OIG, Office Inspector General. They would use my data warehouse to analyze disease states or pharmacy costs, or what prescriptions are being analyzed or prescribed the most. But this is where I see AI changing, where in the past it was just isolated to that person pulling that report or that person that had a concern, where AI at some point can be used to, and this is where the privacy concerns me. It's tough, but you have AI that pulls enough of your information to know that you're diabetic, you've already had 2 myocardial infarctions. Um, Today, when you wake up, you have to have orange juice, and after your orange juice, make sure that you drink 2 glasses of water and take your medicine. Where AI starts to communicate out to the person, as opposed to a health provider. Just say, you know what, today, this is your scheduled, this is how you stay healthy today, according to your health records. And AI at some point will reach out to that person. Privacy's scary on that part, but I think that's definitely a possibility. That's just fantastic. Because I've been part of it, I can see how much it can grow. What do you think about that, Heather? AI
Oh,
reaching out to people and say, hey, look,
100%.
today, take your medicine. Don't be a bad boy. No greasy chicken. This is what you should eat for dinner.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% behind
Did we
AI
lose Heather?
helping people
I
live a
can
better life.
hear it.
I think we lost her.
She's talking here. I can hear her.
Oh, okay.
It does say she's offline. Heather, somehow it says you're offline. Are you offline?
Not that I'm aware of. I can hear you guys.
Okay, you can start it again. But Lucky, look, where she is, it's recording on her local system. So even if she's offline, I think we'll be fine
Okay.
because it's recording on her computer. Then when we turn the recording off, it will
We'll give
merge
each
all three of
individual
our
video session. Yeah.
visual videos. Yeah, yeah. So Heather, if you don't mind, if you can start that part about where you are. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, no, I think 100% that artificial intelligence or a program to help individuals remember to take their medicine, to eat properly is beneficial in the future. I see it now with the older population. They need all the help they can get, and they don't necessarily want to go into an assisted living home. So if they're accepting of artificial intelligence or something that will help them in their home so they can stay at their house and properly care for themselves, remind them to eat and drink and take their medicines, then yeah, that would be absolutely wonderful. And I do hope that that's our future.
Well, we all agree then. We all agree. We are in agreement because I think the advocating for a technology, it comes with some negative parts of it. It's just no way of avoiding it. It's just the way that nature works, right? Um, I can talk about hardware that is required to build this AI technology, AI services, AI performance, right? They all require hardware, and this hardware is coming from somewhere underground, right? It's not just showing up in your doorstep because the air was blowing in the right direction. Um, it's all coming from underground. So that supply chain planning that happens all the way from hardware, all the way to your home device that you see, and the utilization of this AI performance, um, it if it does more good than damage, sure. I think healthcare is one of the sectors where we have to really advance in AI because majority of our population is heading towards that retirement age. We have a higher number of people that are about to retire than people that will be actually available for workforce, right? And our taxes will go down because of that. Our ability to reproduce more next generation of worker will go down because we're actually we're underperforming in the birth rate for the developed world, right? I think the number is 2.2 where we're supposed to be at. We're actually 1.67, right? So these kind of thought process when we start thinking about supply chain planning, the birth rate, people that are retiring, we have to figure out how do we augment the workforce that is already shrunk and is going to shrink tremendously. Do we want to participate in AI conversations because now we realize like privacy didn't really matter because somebody already stole our data anyway because we thought about privacy more than we thought. Now I'm a privacy advocate, don't get me wrong, but at the same time you
Yeah.
have to
Right.
find that right balance and strike it not because it's perfect, because you have to work at it, right? Don't let the perfect be your enemy in getting innovation done, right? And I'm advocating for both. I'm advocating for that privacy and technology, and I'm saying that perfect is not what we have today, but we can increase that performance, the most accurate AI with least amount of error with lower amount of risk, right? All the trism is baked into it. We're developing trust because we provide user experience. We have lower risk, and we put security in order to save the privacy, right? So that AI that feeds into the patient's system and say have orange juice and two water, that AI doesn't necessarily have to know all the EHR records. EHR just have to put out that output for that day, and through an API sends that information to the device, and the devices say like, yeah, today's recommendation is orange and two waters. Have at it, right? And don't have that greasy chicken at the end of the lunch, right?
Yeah.
So all these technology that we have, I think we have so much to think about, but the perfect is not what we're going to get the first time. And that's why we have to be very conscious of user experience, very conscious of how we develop the trust with security, and continue building, right? Continue to scale, continue to sustain that technology, because one-time hit is not something AI will be ever, right? Like there's a lot of software that somebody built and it worked great for 5 years and it just disappeared. Like, no, you have to develop an AI that is able to sustain itself for generation after generation. And you have to build trust in that AI over time. So I would say, AyAyAyAi. That's my favorite. Lucky, any departing words?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm just making sure I don't overlap because I'm not able to see Heather's mic or her video anymore. So no, Heather, I'm not able to see. But for the most part, thank you for being part of this podcast today and letting everyone know more about informatics. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for having me, and a special thanks to my VA mentors, Danielle Ciari and Amora Upton. Couldn't be the amazing nurse informaticist I am now without their amazing nurse informaticist help, because they are superstars. And AI.
Thank you for that great introduction and great outro, because we are looking forward to having more of these discussions, and hopefully you'll come back. With that, thank you everybody, and adios.